Hey folks, Teresa from Stringfield Ridge Farm. If you've watched my channel very much, you know that I work for the newspaper, the local small newspaper. We mostly do community stuff, local community events and sports and human interest stories around our county. And so occasionally I get the opportunity to go and interview or meet a political figure or, a star, especially usually political figures or even sometimes authors that have written books, so be in our area, and quite often politicians. So today, and this is actually the fourth time I have got to meet Rand Paul, and he is one of our Kentucky senators, and he ran for president when Donald Trump ran and won. He ran against him at first in the Republican primary, and he ended up getting out, and so he is still Kentucky senator. And he is running this year. So he was on a tour through our area. He made several stops at different counties through our area. And most of those stops he made, we have a newspaper in that county. So I met him up here in our county at Rudy's Farm Center. He stopped there. And Rudy's Farm Center, that family, the family that owns Rudy's Farm Center is our representative, our state representative, Stephen Rudy. That is his family. So Rand Paul come through and he stopped at Rudy's Farm Center, and our representative, Stephen Rudy, was there. And so I went out there and got to video him and take some pictures for the newspaper. So I just wanted to play a little bit of what all he had to say. And, I know you can watch him on TV or whatever, but this is kind of special to me. I want to play that for you and let you see him just relaxed in a little rural area neighborhood, and I thought he had a lot of good things to say. I'm always impressed with Rand Paul. Every time I've met him or seen him or even just hearing him on TV, even I'm always impressed with the things he says. He's he's Republican, but he leans libertarian, and I feel like he does. And he always seems to really, really, really fight for Americans' freedoms. And that seems to be his main focus to me, is he fights for Americans' freedoms. And so I'll let you watch that and just check out Rand Paul in a local rural area setting.
Too heavy and not enough people to pull it, and that's the danger of any country if we allow it to happen. So I foresee we still have either more inflation or rising interest rates or both coming. We have to, if we want to fix this, do what you all do. You have less money come in, you spend less money. But that would seem simple, but it isn't so simple in Washington. And I think the state government's doing a great job. The state government has over $2 billion, almost $3 billion in a rainy day fund. The federal government, we have minus $30 trillion in our rainy day fund. So we're not doing quite as well. But the difference between your state government and your local government and the federal government is they actually will have meetings and say, what's the overall budget, like $12 billion or something?
Well, about $12 billion in general fund.
And that's each year, or that's 2 years?
That's per year.
Per year. So $12 billion comes in, they have to spend it. So there's a debate on which roads will get built, where it goes, there's a road fund, but they have to prioritize the $12 billion. They don't spend $20 billion, they spend $12 billion. They spend what comes in. So does McCracken County. County budget, you've got county taxes, they will spend what comes in. In Washington, I have yet to go to any meeting where someone says, well, we only have this much money this year, so let's prioritize how we spend it. every meeting I go to says just add it onto my tab. But there's a real danger to that. And I think we could destroy the greatness of our country if we're not careful. So I continue to add good. I mean, nobody ever comes with a bad proposal. They all come and it's for some good cause. So we have different groups, breast cancer groups, leukemia groups, hemophilia, Alzheimer's. I have family members with Alzheimer's. They come with purple ribbons. But I'll tell you, this is what I say to them. And I think if everybody did this, we could actually fix the problem. So they'll sit down, they'll say, my grandmother has Alzheimer's, my sister, my mother has Alzheimer's, can't you give us money for research? And I said, well, we're a rich country. Sure, we can spend some money on research. We spent, let's say, $100 million last year on Alzheimer's research. What if next year we only could give you $99 million? Because we're out of money and we have to do a 1% cut across the board. Every one of these people, emotionally charged and want that money for their family and for the research, look at me and say, well, yeah, that's not too bad, sure. And they walk out, I think, not that unhappy. But that never happens in Washington. We never do a 1% cut. That's what I've been advocating is the penny plan, cut 1%, and for a long time you could balance the budget over 5 years just by cutting 1%. Now we've exploded the spending so much it actually takes like a 6% cut. It's a 6-penny plan now to balance in 5 years. But every year we don't do it, it gets worse. When I started introducing the budget, all it took was a freeze. And with economic growth and freezing spending, you can grow out of a deficit. But somebody has to be that voice, and sometimes I'm the bad guy telling them we don't have any money. But I think if we don't have that, it'll be even worse. So I continue to fight for that with the understanding that really I think the role of government is to defend your liberty. It isn't for me to transfer wealth from one group to another, from one person to another. It isn't to do a lot of the regulating of your business and this and that. It's to protect your liberty, which includes your religious liberty, includes your freedom of association, your freedom of press, all of that, freedom of speech. But I'm going to continue to fight, and I've got a few requests and questions still for Dr. Fauci before he tries to leave town, so I'm going to keep working on it. But thank y'all for coming out.
Thank you, Senator. And I think we'll have some time for some questions and answers, but I do want to give a shout out. I mean, Senator Paul, he's a family man, and his family allows him the time to go to Washington. He got 3 sons,
Right.
and it is hard on the family. I just want to give a shout out to my family who's hosting us here today. Matt, my brother Matt, who is the president of the Rudy Farm Center now, his daughter Lexi. And Mom and Dad, they do encourage you to shop the aisles while you're here, and free popcorn for all. But it is good, and we're glad that we have a senator who celebrates commerce and freedom, because not every state in the union is blessed with such a thing. Sometimes it just, some of the things he says, just like right here, it just no-brainer makes sense. But as someone who lives in the Frankfurt world, I can't imagine what it's like in Washington, D.C., because some people have no grasp of reality once they get into those bubbles, and I think that's part of the problem.
There's one other thing I'll mention about the state legislature. I think they did a great job standing up to the imperial power of the governor, the unchecked power of the governor. When the governor sent government agents to a church on Easter Sunday, that's an abuse of power. They stood up to him, and there is an amendment on the bill that I think still should pass that I'm in favor of. Right now, they cannot call themselves into session. And so for 9 months of the year when they're out of session, the government can do whatever he wants. Even if he's breaking the law, they can't come back and stop him. So I think it's important that they have that power. I hope they don't use it very often, but I hope that I want them to have it.
Right. Thank you all for coming out. I know Jim's got a list of questions that he wants to ask the senator about. But
all right, if they're hard, we'll make Stephen answer.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions?
These are just a list of concerns of mine, and I think we see eye to eye on every one of them. And I appreciate having you there.
Thank you.
But I wanted to let you know I support it.
Sure. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Senator Paul, do you have any comment on what's been in the news the last couple of weeks about the student loan forgiveness?
How is that legal?
Yeah, the response here is exactly my response. How's it legal?
Yeah.
There is no legal justification for it. What they've done, and Trump even did some of this, is they've taken an old law from the 1940s that gives the government the ability to quarantine. And at the end of the paragraph, it says, for mumps, measles, and this, the government can mandate quarantine and whatever other steps are necessary. That's what it says in the sentence, which is a stupid thing to put in legislation, to say, and whatever else you want to do.
Yeah.
So under the Trump administration and Biden administration, they said you didn't have to pay your mortgage or your car payment if you told people that you were affected by the pandemic, which all of us were sort of affected by it, but that means they abrogated every contract in the whole country. That went to court and was struck down repeatedly, and they finally gave up on it because the court struck it down. The mask mandate on planes was under the same statute, and whatever else the government thinks is necessary. It was struck down finally by a court. I think this will lose in court, but I think his goal is to do it even, and he said it was illegal. He said, I probably can't do this, it's probably illegal. He did it anyway, but his goal is to pander and try to get a few votes. So maybe he gets the votes by November and the court case is heard after that. But the bottom line is 70% of America still didn't go to college.
Right.
So that means that 70% that did is going to have to pay for the 30% who did. Most of the people with the big loans are doctors and dentists and lawyers and orthodontists, and I love orthodontists. I gave half of my wealth to the orthodontist in town for all my 3 kids to have teeth. But you know what? He doesn't need any help with his student loans. I think he can afford to pay his student loans. They do have big things. The costs are high. I mean, it's not they have no sympathy for the young professionals. Some of them have $200,000 in loans. But if we forgive their loans, do you think that brings the price down? No, the universities are going to jack the prices even higher. And if you're going to college, and let's say you're going to borrow $30,000, but now they're telling you may not have to pay it back. Why not borrow $60,000? You know, if you live with 4 other people in an apartment as a kid, you can save money. But if your loans are going to be forgiven, why not get a bigger, better apartment and live by yourself? You know, so all of the things that people do to conserve and to worry about how big their loan payment is going to be will go out the window, and it would encourage extravagance. But it's also just not fair. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who are successful people in life who didn't go to college, and they're just not too happy about paying. And some people go to college and it's a complete waste. And there are people in your community that are mechanics and welders and carpenters who are doing just fine, good, hardworking people, and they frankly don't want to pay for some other person to go to college who actually isn't doing very well with a college degree. So I think even the left has seen some unpopularity to it, though. I mean, even some on the left are saying, Larry Summers, who was an economist for the Democrats for many years, has come out and said it's going to add to inflation, and have come out and questioned the legality of it as well.
And even if it were legal, it's the most unfair,
Right.
you know, to as all of those you mentioned, those who paid for their college and those who didn't go to college.
Right. And the real problem is a rising cost. And one thing I have offered, which I think is more reasonable, is I think we could consider making college tuition tax deductible. And the difference is this. Some people say, oh, that's a giveaway too. Well, tax deductible is only against if you're working. It's against making a profit. So it's a work program.
Right.
So if I tell you go to college and see right now the way it doesn't really work, because let's say you only make $40,000 a year, you can't really deduct $60,000 in debt in 1 year. You'd have to be able to deduct it a little bit over time. But if you go to school to be an accountant, that could be considered like a business expense. You're learning to be an accountant. Now you're an accountant. I would think you could deduct it against future income. So I'm not against making it deductible. But the bottom line is we need more competition among schools to bring prices down. And some of these schools have billion-dollar endowments. You know, Harvard's got a couple $1 billion in their endowment. They're still charging
30
through the
billion.
roof.
They have like 30 billion.
Yeah.
There's like 700 billion endowments in the universities, and they're going up on tuition.
It's kind of
every
hard to
semester.
feel sorry for
Yeah.
universities, you know. Yes.
The Inflation Reduction Act passed through reconciliation. Is there a way that you can reduce or trim off some of the inflation, such as we're in a farming community, the green energy proposal for all vehicles to go electric? I've read that a farmer going in the field can't plug in a long extension cord for his electric tractor. So what is the solution?
I think they've decided that they want the farmers to have windmills on their tractors. So if the wind's blowing, they can go a little bit. Maybe you'll get to the next row the next day. No, I mean, it's ridiculous and crazy the stuff they're doing. As far as stopping them, by a simple majority, if we took over, we could do reconciliation, but it would have to be signed by the president. He's not going to sign it to undo it.
Yeah.
The other way we could undo it is not to provide additional funds. And we have the power of the purse if we take over the House and if we take over the Senate, but then it would still have to be signed by the president. But the president might be pressured to sign something to keep government open. The problem with it is when we add in a provision to a spending bill that defunds all these new IRS agents, what they'll do is they'll say, oh, we're not going to, the Democrats won't vote for it, and then all of government shuts down. But what many of us have said is if we pass the appropriation bills, there's 12 of them individually, and the only one we hold hostage is the one that funds the IRS agents, we might be able to fix one problem. And only 1/12 of government will shut down, and maybe that department's less than 1/12, maybe it's 1/100. But we never pass the bills. And I'm not on the appropriations committee, but I've been complaining for the last 40 years. I think it's been like 4 times Congress has passed each individual bill. So if we passed the individual bills, we would have leverage over each one. Because I don't think everybody would squawk so much if one appropriation bill was being held hostage until something happened. And then we'd force a compromise. But we never get a compromise because they're all so worried about the government shutting down, and it's in one package. The other problem is since everything's put together, the traditional committee work that you would hope each committee would look at the spending, all the different committees, doesn't happen. They don't even bother to do the bills sometimes. The bills aren't even created. It's just all stuffed together, and it gets away from the traditional legislative process. But there are ways we can fight if we have the courage to fight and the will to fight. But and I'll be advocating for that. I have in the past within our caucus that we should do each individual bill. Now we will only have that control if we take over, and it's very close in the Senate. I think the mood of the public is in our direction. I think the House is virtually an 80 or 90% chance it's going to flip. A lot of the people in the high tax states have moved south, and so New York's losing a seat, California's losing a seat. I think Pennsylvania, Illinois are all losing seats. Those people are moving to Texas and Florida, and Texas and Florida is gaining seats, and those will be Republican seats. That's almost enough to flip the House, just population change. And then the Senate races are going to be close, but I still think the wind's behind us, and we have I think a better than 50% chance that we will take over the Senate too.
Back on to that. How vulnerable is our power grid with all the new beams?
You're talking about like whether or not there'll be too much for the power grid with all electric cars. Well, don't worry. The government's going to make all these charging stations on the front. They bill like $12 billion or something for charging stations. So all the big semi trucks will pull over about every 30 minutes and charge for a couple hours. I don't think it'll really work. And realize that the government's not very good at anything. I tell people it's not that they're inherently stupid, but it's a debatable question. But they don't get the same incentive. Since they don't work on a profit motive, they can keep doing the wrong thing for years. So there's like $12 billion for electrical charging stations. What are the odds that by the time the government decides to do it, puts them out on the interstate, buys the land and does it, that they're not the right plug? You know what I mean? That the electricity or the battery storage has progressed, and they have something that's 2 or 3 years outdated. Sort of like having the wrong cord for your cell phone. That's what we're going to have $12 billion worth of the plug doesn't fit my car kind of thing. I'm not against electric cars. I think it's fine, but I think if you overly subsidize it and really try to extinguish something, you get into problems. Getting rid of coal also got rid of Century Aluminum over in Hawesville. That was 600 good paying jobs. So I think you're going to need all of the above. I think we still should have some coal, but when you shut it completely down, these plants are either dismantled or mothballed such that they can't be started up again. Germany did that, and they closed their nuclear power, and now they're completely dependent on natural gas from Russia. And people aren't too happy with Russia invading Ukraine, and so it's like, but they have no ability really to stop. Now I think they have started burning more coal. And I was talking to some of the people in the river industry. They were telling me a lot of the coal's actually going from here over to India and China. The irony to that is they don't have any scrubbers or cleaners on there, so they burn it a lot less efficiently and less cleanly. So if you really cared about it, pollution, you'd want us to burn it versus China and India to burn it. I know a lot of local FBI agents. I play golf with one who's retired. They're good law enforcement kind of people, but this is the same agency that in 2016, when Trump was a candidate, went after him using a foreign intelligence surveillance warrant. The difference is, if the government wants to tap our phone, we've made it somewhat difficult. They have to go to an independent judge, And eventually you can get a lawyer who will challenge that in court if you don't think it was appropriate. With a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrant, there is no challenge in court. It's secret. They never have to tell you that they tapped your phone, and they don't use the Fourth Amendment as the standard, probable cause of that you're committing a crime. They use probable cause that you're connected to a foreign government. The problem with that standard is, if you're running for president, don't you think you have people on your team who are Russia experts or China experts that have probably been to Russia and China and may make legitimate phone calls? I've spoken to ambassadors from 20 countries. Does that make me a spy because I talk to ambassadors? No, I think it's part of my job to do it. So I'm still very worried about this recent raid because of what happened in 2016. That they were found 17 times to have broken the law, even their own law, even their own loose law on these foreign intelligence warrants. They broke the law 17 times. We discovered Peter Strzok and his girlfriend, how biased they were. We discovered how biased McCabe and Comey was. We discovered how biased James Clapper was and John Brennan was. All the very top now work, surprisingly, for MSNBC and CNN. During the election, when Hunter Biden's laptop, which everybody knew was Hunter Biden's laptop, 55 of them signed a letter saying, nothing to see here, it's Russian disinformation. So yeah, I am worried about bias. The last week, one person got let go from the FBI for supposedly suppressing the Hunter Biden computer and saying nothing to see here. And there may be one other guy that may get let go as well. So yeah, I am worried about it. Do I think it was real smart to keep a lot of all that information? Probably not. So some of that he might have brought on the scrutiny on himself. But I am worried about the politicization, and really I'm worried about the standard. Look, it should always be difficult for the government to listen to your phone, to read your mail, to look at your computer. There really needs to be some evidence, probable cause that you're committing a crime. It should be the exception, not the rule. And if we're doing it to a politician, there always is the chance some people are doing it for political reasons. And so I do worry about that. We'll find out more over time, but it'll end up being a mess. The other thing about top secret documents is I've never actually seen one that actually was secret. Almost everything you ever see has been in the New York Times a week before. I've been to hundreds of classified hearings, never heard something that I thought was secret. And I try to be careful, and I particularly don't talk to the press as I come out, so I don't let anything slip that I wasn't supposed to say. But really, it's mostly in generalities, and it's about strategy and policy, and less about, oh, we have this guy named Sam Smith and works in Western Kentucky, and he's an opera. I've never heard a person's name where I could actually evidently, and the president might get more information, but there's been an argument for probably 2 decades that we overclassify things. So what they do is they classify things not because they're real secrets, because they don't want any of the policy or the press or the public to know about it. So it's really about protecting information from people knowing about it, as opposed to, oh, this is the secrets to how you make a nuclear bomb. So, but it's still messy, and I think it goes on forever. But you can see how the public doesn't trust, a lot of people in the FBI because of what happened in 2016. But I think it takes all kinds, and I think the thing is we have such a problem with the debt and spending. There, at least from my point of view, there needs to be someone like me complaining about it all the time and saying, you want to spend new money, you got to pay for it. And so I'm insistent, even on things where it doesn't necessarily help my popularity. So for example, there was a 9/11 victims fund. Who could be against that? Well, it's 20 years after the fact, and we've already spent billions of dollars. Many justifiably, police officers, firemen who died in the building, absolutely we should have provided for them, and we did. But the new fund they had, led by that guy that used to be funny, but it's not very funny anymore, Jon Stewart, was a 75-year fund. Who thinks we can calculate enough money for 75 years? No limit. It says such sums as are necessary over 75 years, and all you have to do is prove that you were in Manhattan. So I talked to Trump about it, and Trump's like, yeah, I can't say anything about it, but I'm eligible for this thing.
Senator Paul, I want to say I think you're doing a great job. Sometimes you probably feel like you're out on the island with the media on you all the time. But the people back home, we're with you.
Well, thank you. Amen. Thanks, everybody. Thank you all. What's I got to do to get some popcorn?
I'll fix you right now.
All right, there you go. I'm always impressed with him, and he's always very fun. He always makes some jokes and is very lighthearted in his little speeches and things, especially when he does them local like that. When he does just a small group of rural Americans, he's very lighthearted and joking, you know. So anyway, there you go. I thought it was very interesting, and you know, I just stand behind him. He is a really good fella, and very genuine, and I like that he fights for our rights. So thanks for watching. Give me a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe, and watch me and Lee on Friday nights at 7 Central.